Another day I sat there clicking refresh, hoping to hear some news. But these things take time, don't they? As things stand at the minute, the only information we're 100% aware of is that there was initial bid made of between, I think it was 40 and 45 million pound. That's nearly been doubled the second bid to somewhere in the region of 75, 80 million pounds, which has again been knocked back. And I think most people at this stage will be looking at that and saying reasonably, you'd snap the hand off, you're losing money hand over fist. The chairman's admitted himself, he's putting £9 million a year in. Cut your losses and run for the hills. But he's not. And why ain't he? I think one of the reasons is he wants to recoup some of the money that he's chucked in. He initially bought the club for £39 million. He's getting offered more than that, obviously. But he's still running at a massive loss. He's put somewhere in the region of £150 million into the club. And he's obviously wanted to get some of that back. Comes from a wealthy family. And I know there's a school of thought, well, he can write that off. Nobody comes into football to make money. You only ever lose money. But as I said in my last video, I do wonder if it's actually his money that he's lost. And it reminded me of something last night. Was it season 3 or 4? There were the first knockings at the FFP thing. And someone had raised a question, I can't remember if it was one at newspaper ads or at radio. We're still spending money. We're still spending a lot of money on transfers. Obviously been Abdi and Rhodes and one thing and another. And we're not selling anybody. We're going to get in trouble with FFP, and where's money coming from? Club's not generating that sort of revenue. Where's money coming from? And some of you might remember, some of you might have forgot, but he uttered the words, "Don't worry, we have friends." Does that ring a bell now? Don't worry, we have friends. And I do wonder now if the reason he's not sold so far, or not seriously thought about accepting this proposal of what, 75, 80 million pounds, is he's still got people to pay back. I wonder if those friends that we heard so much about are people who's loaned him personally money and they want their investment back. And maybe he ain't got enough money to pay it out of his own pot. Maybe he's hoping to recoup it by getting a staggering amount for Sheffield Wednesday, which he's having himself on, because with every passing week that goes, the value of the club is less. A club that can't afford to pay its players is one thing. A club that can't afford to pay its normal everyday working staff, the gate man, the security, the reception, that's a different thing entirely. Losing money hand over fist, the EFL are obviously looking at it and keeping an eye on it. I mean, to me, it seems like it's worth less with every passing day. And the other thing to remember, of course, is, well, it's okay saying I want X amount, that's my starting block. People are going to say, what am I getting for my money? And what are you getting for your money? 15 players, is it at minute? 16 players. Bannon, Patterson and Firmino still aren't re-signed. The season ticket money for next year has already been spent. The ground doesn't belong to the club. I suppose he could negotiate that as a separate sale. So if you're just buying the club as is, essentially you're just buying a debt. You're buying a club that someone's having to front up £9 million a year to keep on an even keel. Like I said, you're not even buying a stadium. You're buying 16 players, many from youth setup, I would imagine, going into next season. And that's about it. You're buying 15 players and a 25,000 average gate. That's all you're essentially getting for your money. So I think he's going to have to meet him again and think seriously about what cut-off point is, because I think it only ever gets worse for him from this point onwards. And in fact, if you come in and bid 70, 80 million pounds, which you think was over the odds, and somebody won't meet you halfway, any future meetings, I'd be knocking off £1 million at a time. Because I don't think it's unrealistic to think that if things continue on this current trend as they are, that eventually you can probably pick up the club for £1 and save yourself all sorts of money. We'll see. It is a massive drama, isn't it? A massive drama. And speaking of drama, I think that's one thing where we have possibly missed a trick here. You know, remember the Sunderland documentary a few years ago, and obviously there's the Wrexham one. This would have been absolute TV gold. If you think about the last few years at Sheffield Wednesday, if somebody like Amazon or Netflix or somebody like that had picked it up, absolute chartbuster, honestly. It would make an absolute killing. The viewing figures would be through the roof. TV gold. Absolute TV gold. I think we've missed a real trick there. Maybe it's not still too late. I think it's one of the first things I'll be looking at. Yeah, so that rumbles on. Obviously, the wages, I understand some more has been paid in, but not all of it. When does the EFL get involved with that? When does it trigger the embargo? And that's something that desperately got to be avoided. Not being able to sign anyone till January 2027. The other thing with embargo is, the way that I understand it at the minute, is there's the 3 offered contracts to Firmino, Patterson and Bannon, and that if 2 out of those 3 sign that, we're not allowed to then sign anybody else. So much up in the air. It's all a real mess. A real mess. The consortium that's made the bid, tomorrow night, Rob Staten on Radio Sheffield is actually interviewing another member of the consortium. That'll be Football 11 between 6 and 7, so I'm going to tune into that. And maybe get a little bit more background about these guys. Apparently the fella's called John Flanagan. I did Google him, like you do. And the first probably 20 searches that came up were all like obituary sites in the US. So I thought, I'll leave it there and just find out who the bloke is and what he's got to say tomorrow. And it will be interesting to see what he's got to say. It does make me wonder if it might end up with Mr. Chansiri wishing that he got everybody to sign an NDA, because who knows what's going to come out in that. Interesting times ahead, but stressful. I mean, your off-season is usually about having a bit of a break and then picking it back up, and I wonder who we're going to sign. I wonder if we're going to get that centre forward that we need, or I wonder if we're going to get, another centre half, competition at left back. But things never seem so simple at this club, do they? Anyway, as I said, I'll only report when there's actually something to report. And at the minute, I'm just looking forward to listening to this interview tomorrow and finding out a little bit more about this consortium. Because I do think we've got to be careful. And Mr. Chansiri has been a nightmare. But like a teenager on the rebound after getting dumped, I think you've got to be careful that you don't just go out with the next person that comes along, And I know there's a school for anybody but Chansiri. But you have got to know what people are about, what the game plan is, what they've got to invest, what expertise they bring into the table, and this, that, other. So I'll be interested to listen to that interview. Where do you stand with it all? I think everybody's just a bit down about it now. One of the lads messaged me last night. He said, "Jim, it's just getting me down." He said, "I'm actually feeling depressed with it all, And it probably will do, because football plays such a big part in people's lives.